reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network. You're listening to LOTRO Reporter on the MMO Reporter Network, brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at audibletrial.com/MMO Reporter. And by Doghouse Systems. Choose your weapon at doghousesystems.com.
And I am sitting with somebody who is, or who used to be, a Players Council member on the first Players Council group for last year. And what is your name?
A Lebwill, or I think it might be a Lebwheel, if I was a real elf.
If you were a real elf.
But Elebuil is the name.
Okay. Yep. And we were talking earlier, and I'm not going to pronounce that this time.
Okay.
Okay. So, we're going to talk about the Players Council, because the Players Council no longer has a NDA on, I would say like mostly everything, and hopefully answer some questions that people have been wanting to know about the Players Council for the last year. But real quick, why don't you tell us how long that you've been in LOTRO and what classes do you play?
I've been in LOTRO for, I think, about 5 years now. And I have one of every class at cap except a Berg. I haven't leveled my Berg yet. And
Please,
my Warden,
please do not tell me that you have a Hobbit Guardian.
I do not have a Hobbit Guardian.
Okay.
It is a woman Guardian.
I like that.
At one time, my wife and I shared the account, so she had a couple tunes and I had a couple tunes.
I see.
So I've got all characters. My Warden, I think, is around 60. I kind of, once Helm's Deep came out, then that leveling stopped on that particular tune.
So do you play creep classes at all too?
I do have, they're both very low level, or low rank, I should say. I have a Warg and a Black Arrow.
Okay, so when you first applied to be on the Players Council, is it because you have all this gaming knowledge, or was it just because you wanted to see if you could get on or not?
No, I felt that I at the time I played almost all the classes. They were all, I thought, at least reasonably raid ready. There were some that were more raid ready than others, so to speak. So I did do that. I'm in a medium-sized kin, so I thought I had a good feel for what kins were like. I was an officer. I had soloed and duoed with my wife on a lot of content, so I thought I had a good grasp of the game in general. So I thought I'd be able to offer good feedback on that. The classes were going to be changing, so since I played most of them, I felt I could probably provide at least reasonable feedback on that.
You got in, and there was a little bit. I don't know if you want to say controversy or not, but there were people that were applying to get in. Did you hear of people that were recommended to get in and then got in?
I know I was recommended by at least one person. I I'm not sure on who on the council was only recommended and they didn't apply,
Hmm.
but I'm pretty sure that they did ask people that they thought um, might be able to contribute. And I am imagining that they probably did invite some people that hadn't applied themselves, but I'm not 100% sure who they might have been.
Okay. When you finally got in there and they explain how things were going to work or whatever it was in the beginning, um, was it something that you pretty much thought it was going to be, or was it a completely different thing altogether than what you signed up for?
It was mostly what I thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
I guess I thought there might have been more of a provide feedback on grand ideas going forward for the game as far as PvP or rating or grouping, that type of thing, or whatever kind of big ideas they would have going forward. But that part wasn't there.
Hmm.
And when you look over the application, that's not really part of the application. You just kind of hope that that was what it was going to be, and that part wasn't uh, didn't turn out to be true.
Right. I think a lot of people really expected, like, okay, here's a bunch of stuff, here's a bunch of crazy things that we would love to put into the game. What does the Players Council think? And the Players Council's like, no, don't put that in the game. What's wrong with you? Especially horn pets.
That you know what? Some of that the horn pets. I think in general they might have mentioned that they were thinking of putting pets in the game, but to the general community. Um, but specific feedback on whether there was going to be horn pets. I don't think we really got much of a chance to provide feedback on that
They just kind
subject.
of slipped that past you guys,
Yeah,
huh?
there's a fair amount of stuff that comes into the game or is even told to the community that we didn't get advance notice on, but there was a fair amount that we did get some notice on as well.
There was something that you mentioned earlier. You were talking about the Hobbit present system, like how you guys had a little bit of say or didn't have say on that. What was that about?
Well, the Hobbit presents before they were in Update 13, they were thinking of adding experience to them,
Hmm.
and that was actually in the Update 13 beta, and we had provided feedback. Almost all the counselors basically said, "Don't do this. If you need to do it, give people a token that can be used to either give experience or maybe as a small accelerator or something, but we just don't just give a puny amount of XP like what was with the Hobbit presence." And that was basically the same feedback they got in beta,
Hmm.
and then they ended up not giving the XP for the Hobbit presence, but that was something they could have probably not bothered to even put in beta.
Hmm. Um, Last year, I think the Hobbit presents were brought in. Was the Hobbit presents presented to the Players Council before they were put into the game, or were the Hobbit presents before the Players Council?
I think they were before the Players Council, not 100%, although we certainly gave our own feedback on many items
Hmm.
ourselves, and there was definitely mixed reaction on them. The actual UI setup for them didn't go over, wasn't very popular, shall we say.
Hmm.
The idea itself wasn't totally poo-pooed by the council, but the UI setup was not overwhelmingly popular. That's
Right.
for sure.
Okay, but one of the main things of last year that the Players Council did get to see basically built before your guys' eyes was the new trait tree system.
Yes.
And Sapiens has said before, the devs came to him with a plan of putting in the trait trees, and he was like, "What the heck are you guys doing? Why would you change it?" And then they brought it to you guys, and you guys basically said, the heck are you doing?
Yep,
So
I would say
how crazy of a was that time when they were presenting all of this to you?
it wasn't a universal "what the heck are you guys doing." Some people thought it, let's at least see them and see what's happening. Some people didn't think it was a good idea, and so there was a mix of reactions as far as the initial idea of it. Although that idea was coming, they had already been working on them for a while before we even kind of got going. So we knew the idea was coming. When asked about what, like, why do we need to do this, um, they did give us the answers that they've also given the community in general, as far as being able to build them, take away some of the bloat as far as skill bloat and that sort of thing. Um, the actual trees themselves were pretty sparse. If anyone saw Beta 1, um, they were pretty sparse. And that was a disappointment of mine with the skill trees. I thought they could have used the council more for better feedback on the skill trees, because quite honestly, they were very little changed from the initial sort of written overview we got in June compared to the end of August beta 0 and beta 1 that people initially saw them at. And I think they've grown better. I know there's some, people have certain problems with certain skills or certain classes, but I think they're a lot better than they certainly were in beta 1.
I know at the end of beta, they were really trying to polish off the classes as best as they could from player feedback. And I
Right.
think that one of the things Sapient said was there was 1,000 and some changes just in the Guardian within like a couple of months. I was like, holy cow. So that I know they were taking quite a bit of feedback and probably quite a bit of hammering along with that as
Oh
well.
yeah. Yeah, in the beta forums, they weren't popular, but I really think that that was, like I said, a disappointment of mine. They could have used the council more to work on them, so that the beta 1 build was not so stark a change.
Mhm.
That was a disappointment of mine.
Do you feel that the console has changed the game at all? Like, does it feel like it has changed the game like a whole lot, or does it feel like you were just a very small voice, changing very small things? What's your opinion on that?
Um, I think we provided feedback and got some things changed, but a lot of them were, I would say, in the quality of life type category, as opposed to, you know, there was people asking for raids, and um, they're not in development at the moment. So, but there was, you know, quality of life type things that we would um, like like if you could think of any of the things, small things that have come up recently, like let's see, I have a little list of a few of the things that I could remember. The removing of the naming of crit crafted items, so you can have a little checkbox in your crafting
Hmm.
thing. We provided feedback on the mithril coins to go to the moors when you're under level,
Hmm.
and also how to scale the tunes properly. Some of these ideas, of course, came from the community at large and have been there for a while.
Hmm.
We just pushed some of these ideas, like the mail system having extra slots,
Right.
the confirmation box that's you can remove now for about a half dozen different things, where they always said, "Are you sure?"
Yes,
Now you don't
thank
have to.
you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. I don't think anybody has mentioned that, but yeah, the last couple of weeks I've just been checking them all off. I'm like,
Oh
yes,
yeah.
go away, yes, go away. I think another thing that you guys also did was the making all of the festival horses and stuff all max speed and useful.
Ah, yes, the writing trait. That was one
Mm-hmm.
of the very first things that we provided feedback on. That they just said, here's 3 or 4 ideas we have for the different writing traits, whether they're character or account. Um, here's some costs we had in mind. Here's the speed we had in mind. Here's and so and it was actually a poll, which would you buy kind of thing. And so we offered quite a bit of feedback. We got the speed to change so it's higher than what they initially were going to put it at. And the costs, we provided feedback on the costs. I know a lot of people said, "Oh, why is the council?" We provided feedback on it. That's what we did. And we actually had I can't remember the specific idea we had, but there was some ideas that we had that they actually changed what the traits ended up being from what the ideas that they had initially given us. So that was almost the first things that they gave us. It might have been the first or second post that they had in the one forum that was just for dev kind of feedback.
Okay, so were there any type of projects or topics that Turbine brought to you guys but was never used because you guys said, no, don't do that? Or was there anything like, hey, we want to do this, and you guys were like, that's all right, and then they just never did it? Did they ever present something to you that they just didn't do?
I think most of the stuff that they said, okay, this is what we're thinking of doing, or this is the idea we had for implementing a thing we're going to do almost. What's your feedback on it? And then we would provide feedback and maybe get some things changed about it. But most of the ideas that they were going to implement,
We were going to go ahead
I,
and go
I think
through
they
with them.
did implement almost all of them anyways. I don't think there was anything we totally said, no, don't do that. Like the Hobbit presence was the one thing that they said, but I don't think there was I can't remember if there's anything that we just totally said, do not do that, and shot it down as far as a bigger idea.
Okay, so along with the skill trees from last year, we had the introduction of the epic battle system, or as people still call them, big battles.
Big battles, yes.
What was the initial reaction of those? And did it feel at any time that Turbine had decided that they're going to just do away with raids altogether and just do these battles?
Well, we knew there was not any raids in development, but they had hoped, and they had said to us that the raid version of the big battle, especially if you're trying to get the platinum medal, would feel like a raid. And that's what they told us, and so we were hopeful that was how it was going to be. And we didn't see the big battles any earlier than anyone else. I think it was beta 3-ish that the first battles came out, and so we saw them just when everyone else did. And so a lot of our feedback during the beta was in the beta forums. We did provide feedback afterwards that I know at least I put, and a few other people did put, that they weren't 100% thrilled with how that turned out, as far as being a raid type thing. And there was a lot of talk. Some people liked them to some extent or another, and some people didn't like them as much. As far as not playing your class, you're more playing the role. Mostly engineer, a few healers or whatever, leaders.
You're basically a soldier instead of a hero at this point.
Right. And that was some of the negative feedback that was provided for sure. And we, amongst the player council members, we often discussed, or at least sometimes discussed, that we would like to see actual progression type raids. But this was talking amongst ourselves. I'm not sure how much feedback there was from the devs on those. But I'm almost positive they've at least read everything that we put in the forums. So they're aware of at least how some people feel on it. That's for sure.
Is there anything that has recently come up up until the end of um, um, the the first Players Council? Was there anything mentioned to you guys that you can say that like is there a raid being worked on or thought of, or we keep hearing about a a scaled a older um, raid cluster being scaled like Isengard or Moria. Did you guys hear anything about that, or can you say anything about that?
I think it was the same information that the community has as far as I think TOO is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would hope if they scale it so that it's not easy. If they can somehow do that, so they can scale it so that, hey, it's still really hard to do. Whereas some of the, over time, the ones that are scaled get easier and easier as everybody's power goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Because we know that
but
they can scale it.
yes,
They've been scaling everything lately.
yes. So
Um,
I'm imagining it will get scaled eventually.
mhm.
But there's there's no timeline that I know of.
Mhm. Turbine, I hope you scale Moria. I have not raided there in so long. Yeah, don't touch CD, don't touch Karndum or Uru or the Rift. That's fine. We've heard about why you guys aren't going to do that. Do Moria.
That would be nice. That would be nice. There was that was brought up. There were some people that thought that Moria would be a good one. I do want to say one thing that just came up recently that I saw that was asked for in the Players Council was global chat channels, especially global
Oh yes.
GLFF,
Mm-hmm.
and we were hesitant on whether there should be 3 or 4. We wanted a trade and or no, we wanted, anyways, OOC for sure, and whether trade and or advice
Mm-hmm.
would be the third or fourth one. And that was something that was popular with the council. Sapien said, yes, I'm going to bring that up to the devs and stuff. And it was always something that we kind of touched base on every so often, saying what's going on with that. And I've heard recently, one of the recent Take the Hobbit to Isengard, that they are going to be doing that. So that was something that I personally started that thread that said, let's get that going. So um, hopefully
Hopefully
they
they
get it
do it.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So sounds like they're going to. So that was something that most people thought that would be a good idea.
Mm-hmm. So did before the Players Council, your term was over, your term. um, did they talk about the Bjorn class at all? Did they present that to you guys, and did you guys get to um talk about it a little bit, or did they just say, "Hey, look, there's bears. Okay, you guys are gone. See you."
That's probably closer to that. Uh, we didn't have any advance notice of that happening,
Mhm.
and so we found out just when everyone else did. And so it was mostly, I guess I would say, positive reaction as far as getting a new class and seeing the kind of cool things it could do. Um, uh, there's some, Bjorning class. How many Bjornings really were there? But,
Mhm.
uh, overall, I think it's kind of exciting to at least have a new class and
Yeah,
seeing
if
what
you take the
kind of,
gloves off, it's going to be fun to play.
right.
If we're going to compare this to lore, all day, we're going to find a lot of things.
Yes.
I was telling somebody on the show, if Turbine had announced that we're all getting eagles to ride, everybody would have been, well, mostly everybody would have been like, that is the biggest lore breaking thing ever.
Right.
But as soon as it comes out, you'd get one.
That's right. Too. That is true.
Day one, eagle.
Yeah. Although I still would agree with the people that said, "Yeah, that's not so good."
This is so lore breaking. Woo!
As I ride over them.
Where's my drop the chicken button? All right, so we're gonna go into a couple of player questions here. How often did they bring up PvP? Did Was there any talk about classes or anything like that? Or I think that there was a little bit of talk of the renown and infamy farming that was going on to the Players Council.
That was one of the early discussions we had. They even had an admitted rank farmer specifically chosen to be on the council so he could offer his feedback on the matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so that discussion got pretty heated at times for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So once that was decided that rank farming was not a good thing and they would be keeping an eye out for it, I think a lot of what they rely on though is people, reporting it. That
Right.
you're not going to get much reaction if you just stand there and watch it and do nothing. But I think that was one of the main things that we talked about at least at first. But there were a couple player council members that's what they do is PvP. So it never disappeared entirely as far as discussion among the player council with
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, and also Jinja, the main dev for PvP, would offer. He'd throw in his ideas in some of our discussions, but he would offer, say, "Hey guys, I'm thinking of changing the creep traits. What do you think of these ideas?" And there was some you know some constant discussion of PvP over time. It wasn't like every day that they would have new ideas, but it wasn't completely off the table for months and months at the time either.
Okay. Because a lot of people have the feeling that PvP is just there and that's it. Turbine doesn't look at it, they don't touch it. And, whatever states it's in for, 3 to 6 months or whatever.
Right.
And to hear that sounds pretty promising.
Well, I think um, to Jinja, it's definitely not something that's just sits there for 3 to 6 months. I think he thinks about it a lot, and so he has ideas, and there's council members that has ideas, and some of the council members that are getting carried over to the next council uh, uh, were some of the people that were very strong PvP supporters.
Hmm.
So it won't disappear entirely from what goes on with the council, and I don't think what goes on with Turbine.
Okay, here's another question. Did Turbine give you a questionnaire about, random topics, whatever they needed to talk to you guys about, or did they provide ideas for all of you to give feedback on?
It was more ideas to give feedback on.
Hmm.
There was three different forums they had, and one of them was just their ideas about what they're working on, and then we would provide feedback on it. About the only questionnaire was the riding trait,
Hmm.
and there was actually a poll of which of these four or three or four different options would you think would be the best one. So that was kind of the only real questionnaire as far as that kind of thing goes.
Hmm. Um, what was Turbine's approach to the Players Council? Was it a proactive one where they just kept in contact with you guys, or was it a reactive one where you guys had to, push some idea or react, and then they would, respond back?
Uh, I would think there was some of both. I would say on the PvP, there was definitely some of both. Ginger would have an idea, and then we'd provide feedback on it, but also there'd be some things, some issues that might be thought about in PvP that maybe he reacted to us on. And I think there was a lot of that for any number of the other areas of the game. Um, some were more reactive, like say role playing and that sort of thing was not something they asked us about. Really, that was something that, hey, some of the people that were more interested in the role playing and the cosmetics and some of the social aspects of the game would maybe push or discuss or want something done in that area, and that would be they would more react to that as opposed to being proactive.
Mhm.
Well, the only proactive thing that was the housing that ever never really materialized for whatever reason. I guess their reason was that they couldn't make it as good as the millions of ideas that everyone has had for housing.
Right, because at this point, I would think that it would be almost expansion size.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of different discussion in the housing and suggestion forums. They asked us, what do you want in housing in a players council? That was probably one of the longest threads we had, was a lot of different ideas for housing.
Mhm.
Um, and and then even at the end of the year, they asked the community at large again for the housing, what housing ideas you had. So yes, there was a ton of ideas out there,
Mhm.
and for whatever reason, they, whether it's the resources or whatever, they can't. What they can provide is probably way less than what everyone thinks they should provide.
Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. I think
Yeah,
I think for me personally, the bare bones would be me to be able to skin um, the way that my house looks like outside, like a different appearance or something like that. I would pay for a different appearance, so my house doesn't look like everybody else's house outside.
right,
And um, inside, bare bones, just being able to put my hooks wherever I want them to be and
right.
purchase more hooks.
I think, at least my idea was, if you can't make the hooks freeform, at least just provide tons of hooks, and then people can kind of put their decorations or their items where they
Hmm.
want them, and at least set them up. But yeah, they asked us for ideas, and they got a ton, but I don't know exactly what they could achieve and why they couldn't do it do anything really, or very little, at least for now.
Right. And when they have taken so many opinions and everything, and made um, I don't want to say promises, but made a big deal of
Yes.
giving us the housing, and then to finally just pull away and say we couldn't do it, it had to have been a massive scale of changes that they were going to do.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like, because they did. Now I can't remember the ideas that they had. They had offered a fair number of ideas about what they thought would be cool,
Hmm.
and it was a fairly big post, or a number of posts at the beginning of the thread, and then they wanted us to provide feedback on those ideas, plus any of ideas of our own. And I'm sorry I can't remember some of the ideas they had, but a lot of the ideas that we had were much more than some of the ideas they had
Hmm.
uh, for for different housing aspects. But they talked about having a crafting type uh, capability. Um, um, but there was a ton more ideas from player council members, as far as having a stable with all your horse, just tons of different ideas that people had.
Hmm.
I'm not sure why it didn't go forward though.
Right. Yeah, and we could do a whole show on that too.
Yeah, really.
So we'll just keep going. Um, how much, what could the players' council accomplish in game? Excuse me. How much could the players' council accomplish in game? Like right now, we have this area in Fangorn Forest right next to Quickbeam, and the only way to get to him is for you to just travel. There. There's no milestone. There's no quick travel
Right.
directly to him. Would Could the players council actually point that out to improve that? Like the milestone needs to be there. Uh, would would they listen to that and then maybe fix it, or was that just kind of off the table?
No, that would be the type of thing that the players council would would say, can we get that there? And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that they would necessarily do it, but that'd be the type of in-game things um, that would be kind of right up the player council alley as far as I'm concerned, as far as quality of life type things that make things easier to do.
Mhm.
Um, a- a- but I will say that we didn't really get a look at, update 13 until it was in beta. And
Right.
so, um, and that was somewhat later in our term. And so I'm not sure, um, by the time you play it and figure out what the little, the little problems are, it was hard to provide a lot of feedback before the end of our term on that one.
Right. Players Council Part 2. Get our milestone there.
Yeah, yes, that would be good. A milestone, or I'd just be happy with some way to get to that horn so that you can click it and go to there.
Yep.
Whatever way works. A campfire would be nice. Something.
Something, yeah. Um, okay, and this is kind of a big one, and this is from your kinship as well. Um, has the experience of being on the Players Council affected your view of the game at all?
Um, one time I would say yes, and it affected me negatively. But I've kind of got my groove back a little bit in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm kind of playing it and seeing doing the different things in the game. But one time I was kind of a little bit down on it because of the rating is a long way off, if ever, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I, and that that was one of the things I enjoyed doing. So not that I was a great raider. Tier 1 was usually um, the limit for what our kin could do, but we enjoyed doing it together.
Right. So you would kind of say that you wish that your voice was a little bit bigger as, a group as the player console. Um, is there anything that you feel that you would change about the players console?
Um, there was on the original application, there was supposed to be a monthly, or at least a report from the council to the community on what we were doing, and that never materialized. And that was one of the things that and we talked about it, and we thought it should be done, but that was one of the things that never did happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the main things that, as far as communication with the player council is concerned, I thought that's something that could be improved. I guess there will be a bit more NDA lifting on specific issues in
Mm-hmm.
the next council. So that I think is good in a way. I mean, sometimes you're putting a bullseye on yourself to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
but
I think the biggest thing with the first players council, especially with not you guys not reporting every month to the public and having such a strict NDA on you guys, I I do believe it's because of the skill tree system where they really wanted to just keep polishing that off and making it work and look great before anybody else seeing it first. And I really do think that that is probably why it was so hush hush and why they went back on that.
maybe. But when we really pushed it was almost after the skill tree, as far as when we were trying to say, hey, let's at least say something here.
Hmm.
But like I will say again, they could have got a lot better feedback and maybe some Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 builds in there, that if we could have commented on them, I think the skill trees might have ended up starting off a lot better than they started anyways. They might have ended in a similar spot to where they are now, I suppose, but um, that might have been what I'm not so sure that that was what was the reason for the strong NDA, but maybe it was.
Hmm. Um, a kind of random question from me. Did you have fun?
I did have fun. It took some time. It was mostly time from playing, really.
Mm-hmm.
But it was time to read the forums and provide feedback on the forum. So to take a little bit of time to go through the threads and read everything. Um, but it was still fun. I enjoyed my time on it, that's for sure.
Very cool. Do you have any kind of like last thoughts on it, or is there anything, like you would say thank you, to somebody, or anything like that? Any kind of final thoughts?
I appreciated being on the council. I thank Sapiens for accepting me, and I appreciate all the people that were on the council that provided feedback, because there was a core of a couple dozen or maybe a little more than that that did a lot of the work on the council. So it was great talking with those guys. There is one thing that we haven't talked about that is a possibility. I don't even want to say it's like a glitch.
Eagles!
No, it's not.
Eagles!
Rowan was on one of the earlier Take the Hobbit to Isengard, and he mentioned letting the creeps out of the moors in some fashion, which levers to pull. And when he said that, the council did take that up and did provide feedback on some of the ideas that were in there. So I'm not going to say that this is something that's going to happen,
Hmm.
but it's dangerous times out there with Rohan and Gondor, with monsters everywhere, and it's something that I'd say has a chance of happening in a limited event type way. That might be cool. And we talked about how that might work and how that might look a little bit. But again, it was basically a glint in the eye. I wouldn't say it's something that's for sure happening.
Right. Yeah, there's always been some talk about that. We've talked about this on the show before too. When Codemasters had the property in, on in the east, and England, I believe, and
In
I don't,
Europe,
in
yeah.
Europe, yes. They would take creeps and plop them in Forokell, and they would allow, people to just go out there and just battle out there.
Right,
It's such a big, huge open area, and there's not very many questing, going on anyway, because a lot of people just kind of move all over the place when they get to that level. And it was just such a large area with not many things going on. The dev said, "Hey, go fight over here for a little bit, just for an event, and then put everybody back and
right.
back to normal."
That
So we know
that's
that Codemasters could do some of that stuff and, move things around, change things around, but we also know that Codemasters changed the code a little bit as well, which is the reason why Turbine is having so many problems trying to get the Euro players onto the American player
right,
servers, which they can't do. They say. Another thing was in Mirkwood. Mirkwood, there was going to be a. They said that it was going to be a new map, a new Moors map, and we ended up finding out later on that it was going to not be a map, but it was going to be a smaller uh, instance skirmish-like thing that both sides could jump in and fight and maybe fight over something or just kill all of the, everybody or whatever.
right.
Whatever the idea was, it just kind of fell on the side because they didn't have enough time to do that. So we do know that they do want to do something, that they can do something. It's just the time and the place of it too.
Right.
And everybody keeps thinking, Rohan, there's war everywhere. Gondor, there's war everywhere. Why not out there? So we'll have to see if that actually comes, in the future or not.
Yeah, that would be about a year away from now. But I think I there's a small chance that there'll be something that, at least of an event type nature, that could happen.
Hmm.
I hope it happens. We talked about some ideas, and it sounded like hopefully we could make it fun, but who knows?
Hmm. Yeah, I would love to have creeps out there somewhere in the higher areas, of course, a high, max level,
Right.
and have them build up. in the moors, in the ettenmoors, have them build up all of their commendations, because when you have all the stuff in the game on the ettenmoors, your comms just sit there and they do nothing. So you get all the way up to 10,000 and you spend them. You spend 10,000 comms, boom, you're out in Rohan. You can run around for 3 hours.
We were talking more how it would work on Freep's side, but we did talk a tiny bit about how it could be something that a creep side type, either an event or I don't know if we ever talked about individual comm type things,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that'd be kind of, hopefully they can keep that idea going. And but like I said, it was kind of a what would it look like kind of thing, as opposed to, okay, this is what we're doing, what do you want in it?
Right.
But at least it was something, to some extent it was something that at least we could, a future thing that we could provide, some some sort of bigger ideas on what the type of thing could be, as opposed to, we're thinking of having a mail system that has, or we want to do a mail system that has multiple slots, and
Mm-hmm.
please provide your feedback on that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll have to see if they do anything with Creepside. I think most of them are getting claustrophobia by now anyway.
Yes.
Okay, well, this has been great. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to have a lot of questions answered from this. And thank you for sitting down and having a chat with me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
If anybody wants to get a hold of you in game, or maybe a website or mail or something, can they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me on Brandywine, Aleb will, or I am on the forums. I never posted too much on the normal forums. I did post a lot in the Player Council forums, but I post as Fund and Strong Arm, all one word. So if anyone has any questions, they can feel free to ask me there.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This was awesome.
No, no problem. Good night.